Okay, peeps, welcome back. So today we're going to go however Meta might be getting ready to pop off to new all-time highs and also some new grayscale trusts that just came out onto the market. So with that being said, let's get it. All right, so first thing we're going to look at is the portfolio here. So we'll go over the portfolio first. As you guys can see, up 41%, almost 42% on Meta. It was actually up a lot more today. So we were up roughly about $1,200. Right around the peak when I think this thing was roughly about $34, but there was some kind of pullback towards the end of the day. So that sucks, but it's going to happen. Some of these people are probably day trading these things and want to get out at the end of the day before the market closes so that way they're not forced to hold overnight. Some people just do that. Not a big deal. So you can see we're pretty much still break even on HZEN. Don't have a lot of HZEN still, but if the cycles remain true for crypto, I think there should still be plenty of time on the horizon to accumulate. Again, ideally, if Bitcoin's not going to hit all-time highs till around November, December of this year, that still gives us another 6 months to accumulate at these cheap prices that we're seeing right now. So ETCG still down $1 per share. Again, that's not a big deal. We were down even more than that at one point, but again, the spot Ether ETF news is making these things moonshot. So let's get into these grayscale crypto trusts. We'll do the price charts at the end. So grayscale crypto trusts, as you guys can see here, this is a full list of the single asset ones. I suppose I could go over the diversified ones too, but we don't usually really talk about these. So you can see they added a couple new ones. If I go down to the bottom here, you'll see that there's a grayscale stacks trust, which has actually really only has like a very tiny amount of investment here, so 1.4 million, but you can see it's private placement only. Now, I do not know what private placement only means. What I do know is that's probably for institutional and or accredited investors, most likely, if I had to guess. Or maybe they just want people to buy directly from them, from the public. I'm not sure, but if this is for private investors only, people that have very high net worths, does it suck we can't get into the trust? Okay, yeah, sure, whatever. But there's other opportunities, okay? Not a big deal. So there's one for stacks, as you guys can see, and there's also one for where is it here? So near protocol. I'm pretty sure that's what this is for. Again, kind of similar market cap here. So you can see at the bottom it says private placement only. So yeah, that is kind of lame, but is what it is. Not a big deal. I mean, the reality is most of these could do probably 100x. I mean, GBAT going to 500 million, absolutely possible. A lot of these are very small, 16 million, 12 million. ETH is actually quite large. That's pretty big. That's 11 billion. So I'm not sure how much higher that's going to go, but BCHG, again, only 158 million. ETCG, 361 million. ETCG could easily do a 10x. PhilG very small, HZEN very small. I could easily see those doing 100x each. LTCN easy 10, 20x. I don't think that's impossible. And a lot of these that are in the single digits or double digits of millions, sky's the limit, honestly. So, but since we are not able to buy stacks and near protocol, at least it appears to be on the surface, I could be mistaken about this. If I am, go ahead and correct me in the comments below. There is alternative options. So as you guys can see here on Coinbase, I have stacks pulled up. You can see that you can actually buy and sell stacks on here. So even though you're not able to buy the Grayscale Trust, you can still buy the actual cryptocurrency. Now, a lot of people don't want to do that because of the hassle of self-custody and transferring coins and taxes and all that stuff, and it's understandable. But if you don't have the option, because private placement basically means wealthy accredited investors only, then, well, you really don't have a choice. The only other choice you have if you want to get exposure to the cryptocurrency is to buy the cryptocurrency. So you can see stacks here, and then if I go ahead and type in near protocol, here it is right here. You guys can see the price here. You can buy it here on Coinbase if that's what you want to do. There is other exchanges like Kraken and Gemini and Binance, KuCoin, of course, whether you get exposure to those or not, Crypto.com, Uniswaps, things like that. Whether you can get access to those or not kind of depends on whether you have a VPN. It also kind of depends on what state you live in. So Those are some things to consider. One other thing I wanted to point out here is when you go to CoinGecko, again, we've talked about this site previously. This is kind of how we track the overall market for crypto. You can go down to exchanges. And if you live in the US, this is obviously for US, mostly for US people. You can click on the exchange tab here. We'll just click one. I mean, they have a bunch of different exchanges, but Coinbase, it'll kind of give you a layout of all the different coins they currently have on Coinbase, as you guys can see here. Obviously, it's way more than 50. I will tell you guys this right now. When we got into crypto, Coinbase only had like 11 or 12 cryptocurrencies on it. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Orchid, but Orchid, still Stellar Lumens, Bitcoin Cash, Litecoin, Ethereum, Bitcoin, Doge. Well, even Dogecoin back then wasn't even on Coinbase. So the fact that there's all these other cryptocurrencies that you can buy now, there's like more than 10x what we used to be able to buy back in 2020 before the 2021 bull run. Believe it or not, this is how it used to be. There was only like a dozen coins available. So you can go here, you can take a look at these. Another way to do this is you could go to, let's say you wanted to go to the coin itself just to see where they're listed. Let's pick Stacks, for example. So you can click on Stacks. It's a decent market cap. I mean, 3 billion is not small by any means in a basically pre-bull market. And you guys can see there's like 7 different pages here. I'm not going to click on all of these, but so you basically go into the coin, scroll down to the bottom of the page, and it gives you like a list of all the different exchanges here that you can buy these on. And you can literally do this with any coin. What I will tell you guys is if you're going to it's not illegal to buy cryptocurrencies on overseas exchanges if you live in the US, but if you have, you guys would have to look the rules up for this to be specific. Again, I'm not a CPA, but I believe if you have an aggregate total of 10,000 or greater in a given calendar year or tax year or something like that, you have to file an FBAR form. Because if you do not, then you'll get some kind of hideous penalty and potentially even not so free time, so to speak. So definitely be careful with that. Again, not financial advice, but do understand the tax implications of what you're getting involved in. Okay. This is one of the reasons why we try to stick almost exclusively to US exchanges because of the whole FBAR FinCEN thing. I don't want to get too deep into it, but let's get into the charts now. So LTCN, as you guys can see, there was kind of a not sure what the heck is going on here. Sorry about that, y'all. The trading view chart keeps doing weird stuff. So we had this kind of breakout here. So you can see the green candle breakout. I suppose if I was to put the trend line like this, it's less obvious. But actually, when I put the trend line like this, it seems a little bit more obvious what's going on here. So we kind of basically were testing this on the way down, had this little breakout candle. Now we're coming back to retest it. That I did tell you guys that was a possibility, or we come back down to this trend line, which we have not. So we might be retesting support and then taking off from that point. That would make perfect sense because it would create our swing low and then make a higher high. Again, ever since back here, we have had a series of higher highs and higher lows, which again is a bull trend. The only way that this would turn from a bull trend into a bear trend is if we basically this would be like a swing high. Let's say this candle is the high and then it pulls back even further like that. And the next swing low is lower than, I would say, this area right here. That would be a shift in trend. Again, I don't see that happening. So what we're looking at right now is basically we're like around $26 as support. The swing high up here is going to be 54. So again, we do have this MACD death cross. Histograms turning a little bit more bearish. The targets, once again, I'll reiterate to y'all, is going to be basically the swing high up there. So $54 or the top of this control bar, roughly around $75 to $80. And then you'd be looking at $100 to $135. So if I take it from the current price to the swing high, you guys can see it's pretty big. So 80%. And then above that, roughly about 165%. And then all the way up to 238 to as high as, I'd say that's probably around 360%. So I'm actually going to pop down here to the daily. Let's take a look at that because, again, the daily is kind of a front runner or an early indicator of what could happen on the weekly time frame. So it looked like we had this nice clean breakout and we were getting above the EMAs, but now we're back down below the EMAs. Is this bearish? Not necessarily. I would say it's only bearish if we get kind of below these candles here. That would definitely be bearish in my opinion. Because again, we have resistance turns support here. If we get below here, then that's obviously not a good sign. As of right now, I would say the LTCN chart looks like it's just kind of chopping sideways. It's not really doing much, but it's not bearish per se. Um, so there's that. I do also want to point out the possibility that this could be an inverse head and shoulders pattern. So it's not really going to be so obvious at first glance on the chart, but we kind of have a shoulder here, a head here, and potentially another shoulder forming here. As you guys know, inverse head and shoulder is a bullish pattern. So if I was to go ahead and measure this, let's say from basically the top or from the neckline to the bottom there, you guys can see, let's say the breakout is, I don't know, in a couple of days from now, it would basically put us pretty much right back at this swing high up here. So you could be looking at potentially roughly about double your money on this one. So it looks like the MACD might be wanting to go back to a death cross. We'll have to see how this plays out in the coming days. But even if it does have a death cross, that's not necessarily bearish. It's a warning sign, but it would only really truly be bearish again if we get below this area right here and below this zone. So BCHG, we'll start out on the daily since we're already over there. This one does kind of look like it might want to curl down too. Again, there was rumors that the Mt. Gox Bitcoins were going to be released and basically given back to the owners from back in the day, which, you guys know that, I don't know if you guys know, but Mt. Gox was like an old, I believe it was like an illegal site that bought and sold Bitcoin. I'm not sure exactly what the story is, but a lot of people that had their Bitcoin from back then had the Bitcoin at like $1,500 per Bitcoin. So if they get their Bitcoin now and Bitcoin is $70,000, the market is pricing in the possibility that they may sell their Bitcoin. And again, it's a lot of Bitcoin. It's like some 100,000 Bitcoin worth $9 billion or something. So you can't see it now because Bitcoin has recovered, but Bitcoin and the rest of the altcoins were kind of pulling back potentially on this news. Along with something from JP Morgan earlier. I'm not going to get heavy into it, but so BCHG right now is sitting on the EMA. There's a chance we could come back and test the bottom of this range. At this point, it looks likely. So again, that's going to be about $10. But if you wanted to add to this position and you're bullish on it, I mean, there's no reason not to buy the dip. Again, that's not financial advice. We are adding to AMC, even though AMC is still technically out of the money at this point, or basically underwater. So you can see this potential risk of a MACD death cross here. Again, we kind of have this tweezer top. That's a bearish signal. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to dump. And just like this didn't necessarily mean it's going to pump. You can see we had a tweezer bottom here, but we only pumped for 1 week. Then we pulled back. So I would say BCHG more or less right now is kind of neutral. It's not bullish, not bearish. It's just kind of chopping sideways, like I said. This could be what's known as a pullback in time, where the price just basically chops sideways, accumulates, and all of the indicators reset. So there's no dump, but there's no pump either. It just kind of chops sideways while the EMAs catch up. So support as of right now still going to be between 10.25 to 12.70. Kind of the target we're looking at up here is $24. So if I'm to measure from the current price to the swing high, it's about 95%. And from the support to the swing high, we'd be looking at about 130%, roughly thereabouts. Okay, so HZEN, this one is actually looking quite a bit more bullish, but then again, that's not really surprising. HZEN was kind of a laggard. In my opinion, I don't think that this one was actually supposed to move this early. I think it probably was supposed to wait till a little bit later, but the spot Bitcoin ETFs might have changed that a little bit. So anyways, we got a breakout here. As you guys can see, we have 2 candle closes now above the EMAs. That's very bullish. And we're kind of smacking our head against the resistance here. So if I go down to the daily, you guys can see we now have a triple golden cross. This is a bullish engulfing candle. It is above these previous candle closes, so everything looks very bullish. The MACD is also moving up after a golden cross. So everything here looks very, very bullish as far as I'm concerned. And this weekly candle currently is above this one, which is above the previous one. So everything looks good. The only kicker is you can see the wicks here pushing off of that resistance. So this is still resistance. So let's go ahead and measure this from the current price, let's say, to the swing high up here. You'd be looking at about 30%, and then all the way up to the 10 and a quarter or 10 and a half mark is about 69%. If it pulls back, it likely is going to pull back into this trend line. That's typically just how it goes when we're retracing some kind of trend line. So that's going to be about 4 and a quarter, as you guys can see there. So ETCG, this one is very, very bullish looking. Again, ETH Classic is an oscillator to Ethereum, so I kind of expected this was going to happen. In fact, I told y'all this was going to happen. If we look at ETH, it's actually much more bullish than ETCG. But an oscillator basically moves in tandem with the price of the asset that it's tracking. It's pretty much mirroring the asset that it's tracking. That's what an oscillator is. So we had kind of the sell-off fake out down into this channel below the trend line and then pop back up on the EMAs. Very tricky kind of situation here, but we did get back and we are bullish again. Pulling back now into this support, and I suspect when this thing does launch, assuming that the ETH ETFs actually get their ticker symbols and get listed on the exchanges, I suspect that we're probably going to launch pretty much right past this resistance here. I don't think we're even going to respect this thing. I think we're probably going to go all the way up here, most likely. So this would basically be from the current price to $42. Again, that's a 161% move, as you guys can see there. I say that because if we go back, I'll just go back real quick. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but you guys can kind of see what happened with Bitcoin here. So Bitcoin kind of just flew straight up. It didn't really, like this support zone, we were here for a minute, but we didn't really stay there very long. Okay, we kind of chopped here sideways and then boom, just absolutely took off like a rocket ship. And, you know, this, I was thinking like this bear market swing high was going to be a stop level. Nope, just flew right past it. And then thought this was going to stop it. Nope, just kept on going. So you guys can kind of see my point that I'm trying to make here with ETCG. So if we do pull back, we'll probably pull back into the trend line. Again, that's somewhere around 1450. If this thing does bounce and take off from there, that could be the last opportunity to get into ETCG on the cheap. So this green candle right here, it's very hard to tell, but looks like it did not quite get past that red candle. So it's not quite a green engulfing candle, but that's a pretty big candle with a lot of volume, as you guys can see. Huge volume back here. So we haven't seen a candle bar or a volume candle bar like this on this trust in like eons. You guys can see how huge it is. So I go all the way back here. The last time we saw a bar that big was all the way back in May of 2021. So that's kind of a big deal. So pretty much what we're looking at here, cup and handle target, it's going to be all the way up here at $54. If we do get a pullback, we probably will pull back into the top of this support. So $29 is what we'd be looking at. We'll just go ahead and measure it from the current price to the cup and handle target. So that's going to be about 54% if it gets a pullback into the top of this support, which is definitely a possibility, I would say. You'd be looking at about 87% move. And again, the peak for ETH is just slightly above this resistance here. So it's not really even all that big of a move. All right, PhilG, it's kind of stuck in between trying to break out of the EMAs and getting held down below the EMAs, so we don't have a definitive move yet. The high up here is $400, and the pullback could be all the way down to $26. I'm not sure that's going to happen, but again, until we get a break of this area right here, I would say we're still kind of in this bear trend. So high, low, lower high, lower low, lower high. And then the question is, does this become a point where we kind of, how do I explain this? So we kind of do something like this, or we do something like, say, this. That becomes the question, okay? So if we get something like this, then we just change the trend into a bull trend. If we get something like this, we get a continuation to the downside. That is the difference here. So the measurement from the pullback area to the high, as you guys can see, would be absolutely monstrous. So 1,500%. But if we get a breakout of the EMAs to the high, it's still pretty good, but not as good. So 247% move. GBAT, this thing's kind of slowing down a little bit, but again, this wick is really long, so I suspect we're probably going to get some more bullish action in the next couple of days. Again, we had 5 weeks of green the first time, 5 weeks of green the second time, before and after the breakout. And once again, we're on week number 5 right now. So the question is, how high will it go? That is an interesting question. I really can't tell you. I'll tell you guys from the first move, from the low to the high was 300%. From the low to the high was 525%. And from the current low to the current price, 188%. So it kind of varies a little bit. It's not very consistent, but this is a trajectory of higher highs and higher lows. So this is a bull trend unless we get below here, which I don't think we're going to do. But as of right now, this still looks very bullish in my opinion. So from the current price to the swing high, 80% move. If we pull back, likely it's going to come back down into the zone somewhere probably around this red EMA, so maybe $9. 261% move to the upside from that point. So GLIV, looks like the bears are trying to hold this down. Again, this is a very bullish candle right here. It is a green engulfing candle. It is above the trend line and also above the EMAs. So I think possibly what could happen here is maybe it pulls back into maybe either the blue or yellow EMA and then takes off to the upside. Again, we have a bull trend going on here, so ideally we want to see a higher high form. But from the current price to the swing high, we'd be looking at about 85%. And from the, let's say, the yellow EMA, which is where I think it probably could pull back to in the immediate short term to the high, roughly around 162% move. All right, so G-Link, this one's starting to look like it actually has some life and is doing something. So we do have a higher candle here. This does look like a green engulfing candle. Again, it's above these highs right here, which is kind of what we want. So this could be the last opportunity to get into G-Link, potentially before it actually starts ripping all the way up to highs here. So from the current price to the highs, we'd be looking at about 76%. If it pulls back, probably somewhere into this trend line. So from the trend line to the high, 141%. Again, that's going to be roughly around $93. And we do want to see the MACD and the RSI have a golden cross, which we have not seen yet. So GSOL, this thing did have a candle breakout, as you guys can see here. And the current candle is not really doing much. So yeah, I'm not sure if we're going to see a green candle or red candle by the end of the week. I mean, this thing's literally flat. It's gone nowhere. So let's just go ahead and measure this. From the current price to the high, as you guys can see here, 28%. And if it pulls back probably into this white trend line, the white and the green trend line are converging at the current price, as you can see, roughly about 64% move. Just to give you guys an idea of where the next levels are for the Fibonacci. So, and I say this because we're almost at all-time highs. The top Fibonacci up here, as you guys can see, is roughly around $1,900. Again, we are in a bull trend, higher highs, higher lows, so anything is possible at this point. GXLM got a big fat green candle and then rejected off resistance. So likely this line over here, this top trend line, is going to be support. It's about $43. So the high up here is $70. So if I just measure from the current price to the high, we'd be looking at 54%, and then say from the trend line to the high, roughly about 60%. So Mana, it was a little bit higher today. It was actually a green candle turned red, so probably some sellers looking to take some profit at the end of the day would be my guess. If I roll down to the daily time frame, you can see we're still very bullish. So MACD golden cross, RSI golden cross. We have a double golden cross here on the EMAs. We just need the blue one and the yellow one to cross above the red, and then that would be a true golden cross. A break of the trend line, bounce off support, everything looks good except for those EMAs. So again, this is a pretty fat green candle, went right above the EMAs. I'm suspecting this thing to push against the highs. What I'm curious to see is where it's going to go when it does get to the highs. That's kind of what we're waiting to see is going to happen. So we have not moved anything just yet because we want to see what's going to happen when it hits the highs. But from the current price to the high, I actually got to remeasure this. Sorry about that. So from the current price to the highs, about 130%. If we get a pullback, probably going to pull back into support somewhere around that red EMA. To the highs, about 246% move. Now, if I do a Fibonacci retracement on this one again, because I do think this is going to push highs soon, the top level up here is $250. So it would be, like almost an 8x the current price, 9x the current price. So Zcash accumulation into a pump is what this thing is looking like. Got to break the trend line. I'm not sure why all these resistance zones are here. Sorry about that, y'all. Let me get rid of some of these. Okay, so that looks a little bit more clear. So from the current price to the swing high, we would be looking at 70%. If it gets a pullback, it probably gets a pullback into around, I'd say, the bottom of this support because it lines up with the EMA and the trend line. Again, that's about $4.30 per share. To the swing high, roughly about 137%. So anywhere between here to $4.30 a share, you'd be looking at potential accumulation there. Anyways, hope you all enjoyed this content. Again, this is our video on the Grayscale Trusts and talking about the new ones. If you guys are not accredited investors or institutional investors, assuming that's what that means, where you guys could potentially start looking to get the actual cryptocurrency. So hope you all enjoyed this content. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see y'all later. Peace.